ज्ञानं तेहं सविज्ञानम् इदं वक्ष्यामि अशेषतः यज्ञात्वा नेह भूयोऽन्यत् ज्ञातव्यम् अवशिष्यते ज्ञानं तेहं सविज्ञानम् इदं वक्ष्याम्यशेषतः यज्ञात्वा नेह भूयोऽन्यत् ज्ञातव्यम् अवशिष्यते ज्ञानं तेहं सविज्ञानम् इदं वक्ष्याम्यशेषतः यज्ञात्वा नेह भूयोऽन्यत् ज्ञातव्यम् अवशिष्यते. What word? Jnanam, phenomenal knowledge. Te, unto you. Aham, I. Sa, with. Vijnanam, numinous knowledge. Idam, this. Vakshyami, shall explain. Asheshataha, in full. Yat, which. Jnatva, knowing. Na, not. Iha, in this world. Bhuyaha, further. Anyat, anything more. Jnatavyam, knowable. Avashishyate, remains. Translation and transcendental purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Please respond. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Purport. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. This is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 1.3 say, Kasmin Bhagavo Vijñate Sarvam Idam Vijñatam Bhavati. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Paramani Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna. So we're looking at this chapter which is titled Knowledge of the Absolute. And we have just started this chapter. Last week was Bhagavan Prabhu gave a very nice class on the first verse. So just a little bit of background to this chapter, and then we'll get into this verse. This is a very, very important verses actually. If you look at Prabhupada's audio, for the first verse, Prabhupada has given at least 20 lectures. It's very rare to find some lecture, some verse where Prabhupada has given so many lectures. So that tells us how important these verses are. So in the last verse of the previous chapter, Krishna concluded that among all the practitioners of yoga, the topmost is a devotee. Closer. Oh, this one is it? Okay. Is it better now? Hare Krishna. Sorry. Yeah, so the last verse of the previous chapter, Krishna said that the topmost yogi is a devotee. And what are the symptoms of that devotee? That is always abides in me, is always remembering me constantly, and is engaged in transcendental devotional service. So this chapter, actually, interestingly, Krishna immediately starts saying that, so following on from the last verse, he says that how to remember Krishna. How to remember Krishna is very logical for us, that if you have to remember someone, we have to know about that person. Without knowing about the person, we cannot remember him, isn't it? That's very commonsensical knowledge. So that is why Krishna is starting this chapter. And normally, if you notice in Bhagavad Gita, generally Arjuna starts by asking a question. But here, Krishna immediately starts, because he's just following on from the previous verse of the last chapter, where he already told Arjuna that the topmost yogi is a devotee. And how does he remember? How can he remember? Unless and until he gets knowledge about Krishna, we cannot remember Krishna. Right? So that is why Krishna is starting. And there are so many beautiful points in these two verses, the first and second. We will try to go through them and establish the fact that why is it important for us to understand Krishna, and why is transcendental knowledge so important for us. And naturally, knowledge means we have to receive the knowledge from someone. So whom should we receive the knowledge from? And to receive the knowledge also, you have to have some qualification. Like for example, in the material world, if you are going to a medical school, you can't just walk into the medical school and start learning, right? You have to have some qualification. There is some exam that you have to pass before you get admission. So there is a qualification of the person who's speaking, there's a qualification of the hearer. And then finally, we'll see what is the result of receiving this transcendental knowledge, which is very important, because without any, of course, we don't look at, generally we are accustomed to seeing the benefit of doing the result of doing anything. What is the result of that? Of course, there is transcendental knowledge has its benefit, and that is the perfection, which is what Krishna is speaking here. That after knowing this, there is nothing else that remains for us to be known. So, what does it practically mean for us? Of course, I can say that I'm not from a medical profession. Does it mean that after becoming Krishna conscious, I will understand everything from medical field? No, that's not what Krishna is saying. So, we will try to understand practically what it means. So these are the very nice points here. So first thing is knowledge. In general, we understand that knowledge is important for us in every field of activity, isn't it? And knowledge here means, if you look at analyze, right, there's so much of data that is around us. We are bombarded with, especially in the modern age, whereas there is so many sources of information, the social media, you have obviously the print media and everything else. We are constantly bombarded with information. Data actually, not information. From that, we have to extract the information. That information becomes knowledge, and the knowledge finally becomes realization or practical implementation of that knowledge. So the same thing applies here also. That's why Krishna is presenting the knowledge, because we understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and only He is qualified to give this information. So Prabhupada often says that the Supreme Authority is speaking. There cannot be anyone else better than that. And of course, either Krishna speaks or is bona fide representative in the disciplic succession. These are the bona fide sources from which we can receive knowledge. And just as in the material field, knowledge is important for us. Ultimately, how do we understand what is the test of that knowledge? Of course, there are so many fields of knowledge. So Prabhupada explains that the knowledge means ultimately it leads to benefit for your own self as well as for the larger good of humanity or the world. So that is what real knowledge is. But today we see that the knowledge that we are exposed to doesn't necessarily lead to benefit. It's creating more difficulties and problems in the world. So that kind of knowledge is not going to help us. So that is not what Krishna is talking about. So here Krishna talks about two terms, phenomenal and nominal. So if I looked at the dictionary. So phenomenal, of course, we generally use phenomenal, but phenomenal, one other meaning is material. Phenomena also means material. So material knowledge, and nominal means that is beyond material, that is spiritual knowledge. So Krishna is specifically talking about that knowledge which is on the foundation of spiritual knowledge, which can actually give us everything that we need. So what is it that we will try to see? So the first part is knowledge is important. Sorry, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Are you able to hear the back? Yeah. So in general, what is knowledge we have seen, but this knowledge that Krishna is speaking is not ordinary knowledge. It is specifically, Prabhupada writes here, transcendental knowledge. And Prabhupada writes beautifully in the purport, complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, which means the material world, the spirit behind it, because we understand later Krishna will explain that so many energies of Krishna are working, and they can be classified into inferior and superior. So unless there is a superior energy acting on the inferior energy, the matter cannot act. Matter by itself is inert. So it has to be acted upon by a superior energy or the spiritual energy. And then the source of both of them. We cannot just look at it from material and spiritual energy, but who is behind this? Who is the source of all of these energies? That makes the whole knowledge complete. That is what is transcendental knowledge. And in Bhagavatam, there are so many verses which glorify transcendental knowledge. One verse which our Guru Maharaj often told us is 2.3.12 of Bhagavatam. It's a very famous verse which says, Jnanam yad aprati nivritta gunormi chakram, which means transcendental knowledge is knowledge in relationship with the Supreme Lord. And so that is a transcendental knowledge. But what is the benefit? So as we said, knowledge has to lead to some benefit. There has to be some outcome of the knowledge. It cannot, otherwise it just remains theoretical. How does it change and affect us? How does it impact us? So here it's very clearly he says that transcendental knowledge, which is in relation with Supreme Lord Hari, results in the complete suspension of the modes of material nature, of the waves and the whirlpools. So beautifully the verse describes waves and the whirlpool, not just waves, whirlpools. Whirlpools, we know that once anybody gets trapped in a whirlpool, it's impossible to get out. Waves are still okay. Somebody who's able to swim can come out of the waves. But whirlpools, if one gets trapped, it's impossible to come out. So the material world is described as waves and whirlpools. So transcendental knowledge in relation to Supreme Lord leads to suspension of this waves and whirlpools. So they are like frozen. So they don't affect you. They are there, but they don't affect you. So that is the greatness of transcendental knowledge. It gives us the real benefit, which is what the living entities are looking for. So that is the significance of transcendental knowledge. And Krishna has also spoken about in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, the title itself is Transcendental Knowledge. So, of course, Bhagavatam will expand more on it. So, in the 4th chapter also, Krishna says in the famous verse 4-9 that one who understands my activities and my appearance in truth, that is very important. So, Prabhupada is highlighting this point. Understanding Krishna is there. Many people in India especially will say that, yeah, we know Krishna, we understand Krishna. But are we understanding in reality, in truth? Tatvataha. That is why the verse uses tatvataha. That is janma karma cha me divyam yo janati tatvataha. What happens to that person who understands? Then he no more takes birth in this material world. So if we have to understand in truth, in reality, then the result of that is we are out of this cycle of birth and death. So that is the real benefit that we are all seeking. And of course, once we benefit, we have to distribute this benefit to others. So in Bhagavatam also, in Prabhupada, in the series of lectures on these verses, Prabhupada was very nicely explaining that actual transcendental knowledge is not just in relationship with Krishna, but Krishna has various levels of understanding. Supreme Absolute Truth has various levels of understanding. So in Bhagavatam also we know from 1 to 11, the famous verse which says there are 3 phases in which we can understand the Absolute Truth. First, the immediate understanding is impersonal Brahman. So generally we understand that because we don't see Krishna, we only see his energies. So from that, the first level of understanding is that is all pervading Brahma Jyoti, impersonal Brahman. That is the first level of understanding. Once we cross that, then we come to the localized aspect as a Paramatma. Krishna is the heart of everyone. So that is the second level of understanding. But the highest and the third and the highest is understanding Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. And that understanding is actually complete understanding, and that is the real transcendental knowledge. So Prabhupada even clarified that transcendental knowledge is beyond even understanding of impersonal Brahman and Paramatma realization. And Prabhupada gives a very nice example in this connection. He's saying that if you are, let's say, traveling on the road and in a very far off place, you see something like a mountain, it appears like a mountain. You don't exactly see the full features and aspects, but somehow some hazy or very vague figure you can see. So that is equivalent to your impersonal realization. That there is some vague understanding of. It's also part of Krishna, so it's not in that sense false, but it's not a complete understanding. Then if you go further, as you go closer to the mountain, you can see some green color, some brown color, some things you can see. At least you can see a definite form. So that is like a localized. You can see that form is there. So that is like a Paramatma realization. But as you go closer to the mountain, you can see all the varieties. You can see the trees, you can see the rivers, waterfalls, so many animals grazing and people living there and all that. So that is a complete understanding, because beyond that there is nothing else to the mountain. So that understanding is like Bhagavan. So once we have Bhagavan realization, everything else is included as part of that. So Bhagavan realization includes Paramatma, includes Brahmajyoti. So Krishna says everywhere in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, he's a source of everything. So the impersonal Brahman and the Paramatma are also his features, is coming from him. So in this way, Prabhupada explains that that is the correct transcendental knowledge. And that is why there is a difference between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge. And see, we are very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has given us this direct method to approach Bhagavan. And it is not just philosophical discussion, right? We don't just sit and discuss. There is actual practical activity. There are so many services, right from Mangalarti time till the time we go to bed, constantly there is service, there is engagement. So that's engagement is very important. That engagement is practical realization. That's why it's just not theory, but practice. In Hindi also, in science is called Vigyan, in Hindi. So Vigyan means this. It's not just Gyan. Vigyan means complete knowledge. Means in science of course, theory, there is also practical, isn't it? Without this, science is not complete. Same way, devotional service is also science. So Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is a science. Science means we understand the philosophy and there is a practical implementation of the philosophy, without which only theory is not going to help us. Right? So there is a nice statement Prabhupada writes that religion without philosophy is fanaticism, and philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So these are the two sides. But devotional service combines both religion, that means your practical aspects, as well as philosophy. So based on the philosophy, we have practical execution of that philosophy. That's the beauty of devotion service and understanding Bhagavan. And this Bhagavan word itself, Srila Prabhupada explains that we should understand what is the meaning of Bhagavan. We always say Bhagavan Ovacha. So what is the meaning of Bhagavan? So Prabhupada quotes Parasara Muni, or Parasara Muni's definition of what is Bhagavan means. So I think in the Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter, the very first verse, or the second verse, when Krishna begins to speak, in that purport, Prabhupada explains very nicely what is the meaning of Bhagavan. So Bhagavan, if you break the word, it's Bhagavan. Bhaga means opulence, and Van means one who possesses that opulence. So Bhagavan means one who possesses all the opulences that you can think of. And there are 6 opulences we know. So Krishna is the only personality who can possess all of these opulences in full. We may have seen people who possess some of these opulences, that too not in full, and that too for some time only. It doesn't last. In the material world, nothing lasts forever. Especially, if you look at the entertainment industry, so many movie stars, now nobody looks at them, those who have been there 30, 40 years ago, nobody knows whether they are still there or not. So their opulence lasted only for a short while. And it's only one of these opulences we may have in small amount. But Krishna has unlimited amount of these opulences, and all of these opulences, and forever, eternally. Such a person is Bhagavan. And only Krishna qualifies. We have been hearing about Krishna from our parents or grandparents, and historically, so many years, now nothing has changed about Krishna. Krishna's description still remains the same. And it's not that Krishna's picture changes and he becomes old after a while. No. He's always ever youthful, ever fresh. So that is the definition of Bhagavan. That's why the source of information, if such a person is speaking, knowledge is very important. Otherwise, every other knowledge, as Prabhupada explains, is covered with 4 defects. Every other knowledge is covered with 4 defects because none of us are perfect. We have so many limitations. Our senses are limited. Our perceptions are limited. We are always under illusion. We have tendency to cheat, make mistakes. So all of these four defects are there with every living entity in this material world. So such a living entity is not able to give us true knowledge. But if we are either Krishna is speaking, who's free from all of these four defects, as we have spoken, because of his qualities, which are unlimited and transcendental, is not affected by these defects. So when he speaks, naturally that knowledge is perfect. Either he speaks or through him, his pure representative. So Prabhupada writes, either Krishna speaks or his perfect representative in the line of disciplic succession, like Arjuna, for example, here. Arjuna is a perfect representative of Krishna. So if he speaks in his parampara, whatever is spoken is perfect knowledge. So even though we are not perfect, but because we are receiving the perfect knowledge from a perfect source, and even though we are not perfect, but if we are somehow or the other in a humble mood, submissive mood, trying to receive the knowledge, it will definitely work on us. That is the only way for us. Otherwise, there's no way we can achieve perfection. So this is how we understand that perfect knowledge means knowledge that is in relation with the Supreme Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we also saw that it has to be scientific, so Vijnanam. Then this is spoken a lot in Bhagavatam, especially if you look at the previous verse, in the purport, Prabhupada quotes those very famous verses in the first canto, second chapter, right? 17 to 21, which are very, very famous verses, starting with Shranavata, Swakatha, Krishna, and ending in Bhidyate, Hridaya Granthis. Those 5 or 6 verses are very, very important. In that, one of the verses is 1 to 20, where Krishna says that Evam Prasanna Manaso, Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata, Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, the same thing he mentions, Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam. So this Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam that is scientific knowledge about personality of Godhead. That actually is the only one that can give us Prasanna Manasa. That means a peaceful mind, happy life we can obtain only by understanding Krishna in truth. Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam. Mukta Sangasya Jayate. The result is that we are free from the modes. Same thing, suspension of the waves and whirlpools of material nature. Same thing appears in Bhagavatam again in the second canto when Krishna is speaking to Brahmaji, Lord Brahma. After his austerities, when he got darshan, and then before the seed verses of Bhagavatam was spoken, there is a very famous verse Prabhupada mentioned in the lecture, 2.9.31, just before the seed verses start. In that, Krishna says, Jnanam me paramam guhyam yad vijnana samanvitam. There again he uses the word vijnana. Yad vijnana samanvitam. He says the scientific knowledge about me can be obtained. Now he tells the secret. How can you obtain this knowledge? That verse. So we understand scientific knowledge means transcendental knowledge in relationship with Supreme Lord Hari. And the result is, it results in the suspension of waves and material mood. But how can you attain this knowledge? That is important for us. Otherwise, it is not practical, isn't it? How can you attain that knowledge? So Krishna says beautifully in that verse that only by devotional service can you attain this knowledge. So this Vijnana Samanvitam, that Vijnana, that transcendental knowledge in relation to me can be obtained only by the method of devotional service. And that's why Brahmaji then executed those severe penances, austerities, not just austerities, but austerities in relation to Krishna, in remembrance of Krishna, in service to Krishna. That's why Brahmaji is our Parampara Guru. He is exalted personality whom we are trying to follow through in Parampara system. Right? So we have seen that knowledge in general is important, but specifically transcendental knowledge, why is it important? And how to attain this knowledge is the next step. Krishna has already spoken devotional service, but what does it mean to us, practically devotional service? So here, Prabhupada quotes many verses, but one of them is Sevon Mukhe Hi Jivadav. He says that our senses are not able to receive, as we have said that we are imperfect. So, but somehow or the other, by engaging our ears and tongue, ears in hearing and tongue in chanting Krishna's names and glories, then somehow or the other Krishna is pleased. And by that devotion service, Krishna reveals himself. It's not that we are going to achieve something on our own account. No. Brahmaji says very nicely that, or rather the Lord tells Brahmaji after all his execution of austerities and after chanting some beautiful prayers, Krishna says that all that you have done is all my mercy, nothing else. So same way, unless and until he is pleased, he will not reveal himself to us. Now later on in this chapter, he says that he is covered by Yogamaya Samavrataha. He will never reveal himself because that is his exclusive ability that he will choose to whom he will reveal himself. So if he is pleased with our devotional service, then naturally he will reveal himself to us. So that is a platform. Sevon mukhe hi jivadav, swayam eva spurati. Swayam eva spurati. Naturally, he reveals himself to us. So that is a process. And Prabhupada often quotes this verse to tell us that unless and until we engage our senses, in Rishikesha Seva, Rishikesha Sevanam, that is bhakti. Unless and until we do that, we cannot purify our senses. And only with the purified senses and mind can we actually understand Krishna. So that is a practical process. So there is an objective that we have to attain the knowledge, but there is a practical process to it, and there is a result of that. So everything is there. It's not just philosophy. Then, so through the process of hearing, again, we are all in the practicing stage of devotional service of Vaidhi Bhakti. But Srila Prabhupada has given us such a nice program that by practicing this sincerely, we can also achieve perfection. So we have seen what is a method of receiving transcendental knowledge. So naturally, the next question is, if hearing is so important, then whom to hear from? So that is, we have seen briefly that Krishna is, of course, is the supreme authority, and we have seen the explanation of Bhagavan. But we also have access to pure devotees. In Bhagavatam is full of discussions of Krishna. There is a speaker, there is a hearer. So there are so many qualified speakers, there are so many qualified hearers. So the main discussion in Bhagavatam is between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. And they both are ideal speaker and ideal hearer, isn't it? Shukadeva Goswami is known for his chanting. I mean, the chanting, the limb of devotional service pertains to chanting is exemplified by Shukadeva Goswami. And the limb of devotional service pertaining to hearing is exemplified by Parikshit Maharaj. So these two personalities are showing us, giving us the example of what is the qualification to speak and what is the qualification to hear. And naturally we see that those who are speaking have also heard. So only if you have heard from your superior, your spiritual master, in the right mood, only then you become qualified to speak. That is why the first process in devotional service is hearing. Only otherwise, without hearing and reading Srila Prabhupada's books, what qualification do we have to speak on this subject? Isn't it? Although Bhagavad Gita was there since time immemorial, Bhagavatam was always there, but we never had access to it, access to Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. Only by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada has given us all these transcendental purports with word-to-word meanings and translations. We have some understanding, at least. So naturally, only by hearing are we qualified to speak. So, and in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 also Krishna says nicely that how Krishna is ultimately the one who is giving us the understanding, the remembrance and the knowledge. So he says that Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishto Mattah Smritir Jnanam Apoganam Cha. So the Smriti and Jnanam, which is also related to this, what we're discussing, it is coming from Krishna. But it comes through the parampara system. We are not qualified to receive directly from Krishna, but it comes to us through him, through his bona fide representatives. So that is how, that is a source from which we have to hear. So for us, it's very safe. Srila Prabhupada is there and all his disciples in the parampara are there. They are bona fide sources for us. There may be other bona fide sources for sure, but we know what is good for us, that we have our Acharya, our parampara system. So we stick to that and definitely we will get the benefit. So having seen from whom to hear, now what is our qualification to hear? So there is a speaker, yes, but how must we hear? With what mood must we hear? If we hear in a very challenging attitude, we will not get the benefit. And this applies to in all fields of knowledge. Any field, whether you're in school or university, wherever, if you don't have the humble attitude to listen or hear from the authority, we will not get the benefit, isn't it? So same thing applies here. So one has to be submissive. So in Bhagavatam, it is known as oral reception. Oral reception, Prabhupada translates, means very submissive and humble mood, you receive the knowledge. And then that is glorified in so many places. So we have the famous verse 434, Tadvidhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya, that by submissive inquiries and service, we have to please a spiritual master, and then the spiritual master will reveal the knowledge to us based on our sincere attitude. Then we also have the qualities of a disciple in the first canto, first chapter, 8th verse of Sutta Goswami. Vetatam saumya tat sarvam tatvatastad anugrahat. So there, Shaunakadi rishis are glorifying Sutta Goswami that you are the perfect disciple because of a gentle attitude and a humble attitude. So these Saumya and Snigdha, these two words come in that verse. Saumya means, we know, Saumya word is very common to us in India. Very gentle and humble. And Snigdha means, Snigdha word is very nice. Snigdha, actually in chemistry, it means, what is the property of malleability? The property of malleability in chemistry, we understand that you can take a metal and twist it and turn it whichever way. So Snigdha means the spiritual master can use, or Krishna can use the devotee in whichever way he wants to engage the devotee in that service. So we should be so pliable and malleable that we should be ready to do anything in service of Guru and Krishna. So Snigdha word is very nice. So these two qualities are the qualities of a disciple, and hence he also becomes a qualified speaker later on. So unless one is a qualified hearer, he cannot become a qualified speaker. So we have seen the qualification of the speaker and the hearer. Now finally we'll see what is the result of receiving all of this knowledge. So we have seen all the process. What is transcendental knowledge, a definition, then who to hear from, then what is the qualification of speaker, and then what is the result of this receiving this transcendental knowledge. So here in this verse, Krishna says, after you receive this knowledge, nothing else remains for you to be known. So what does it mean? I heard one lecture from Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, I think when he was here or in one of the lectures, and he very nicely explained it. He said that what it practically means is that whatever Krishna wants you to know, you will know. That's very, very nice, very practical. And I heard another lecture of our Guru Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, he was saying, he gave same thing, similar explanation. He said that the more our life is pure, the more our life is pure by engaging in devotional service, more the things will be arranged for us. Such a beautiful statement. The more pure our actions are, our habits are, our activities are, the more Krishna will arrange our things. He used to say very famously that our business is to chant the rounds and it's Krishna's business to sort out our problems. We simply chant Krishna's name, we always glorify. We know the very famous pastime of Arjuna and Jayadratha. When Arjuna made the terrible vow of killing Jayadratha before sunset, he was very peaceful, but Krishna could not sleep. Krishna was thinking how to solve this problem now. But Arjuna was very peaceful that I have left it to you, Krishna. You are the best person to manage this. So he's the best manager. Guru Maharaj used to say always, he's the best manager. We are actually damagers. We are not managers. So Krishna is the best manager. We just leave everything to Krishna, but of course we have to do our duties, but sincerely we surrender to Krishna. We depend on him for everything, and he will take care of everything. So that is the real meaning of, that is the benefit of this transcendental knowledge. That means we truly understand that Krishna is the cause of everything. He is behind everything. So the first line is Prabhupada writes here, the source of everything. We understand the source of everything. That is true knowledge. So we understand practically that behind everything is Krishna's hand that is working. So if you recognize that in difficulties, Kunti Mata prays that in all the difficulties, Krishna, we saw your hand. So please give us more difficulties so that we can continue to remember you. So that is how devotees are trying, always try to see the hand of Krishna in everything. And that is the real understanding, the real benefit of, otherwise on our own, we are always bewildered, under illusion, we cannot achieve anything. The moment we see the hand of Krishna, then we become peaceful, because he is the one who can actually take care of everything. We were not capable of doing anything. So, so that is the benefit. So on this part, just to conclude, there is very nice discussion between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Rai. Personally, to me, I like this discussion a lot. I always try to refer to it whenever I find some disturbance. I always go back to this conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Rai. Very beautiful conversation. During his travel of South India, Lord Chaitanya, when he was coming from Srirangam up towards Jagannath Puri, he stopped at Simhachalam, a famous Narsingha temple in Andhra Pradesh, in Visakhapatnam. And after that, he came to Godavari, the banks of Godavari. There's a place called Vidyanagar. And Vidyanagar was a place where Ramananda Rai was staying. He was the governor of that place. So when he came, actually he came to meet him. So when he came to Vidyanagar on the bank of Godavari, he happened to meet Ramananda Rai, and they had very nice exchanges. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Rai, okay, now tell me, what is the highest goal of life, human life? So this is how the conversation started. So Ramananda Rai first said, he quoted a verse from Vishnu Puran, which Prabhupada often quotes in purports. He says that the perfection of one's life is achieved if he executes the Varnashrama Dharma, and through that execution of Varnashrama Dharma, he worships Lord Vishnu. And nothing else actually pleases the Lord. That is how the verse ends. That is ultimately pleases Lord Vishnu. So that is the ultimate perfection of living entity or human being. So Mahaprabhu heard that, and Ramananda Rai quoted various other verses from Bhagavad Gita, that especially that to do with Varnashrama. In the 18th chapter, Krishna says the Brahmana's occupation should be like this, Kshatriyas, Vaishya, Shudra. So all those verses he quoted, and he said that the worship of, so whoever is following this Varnashrama and at the same time worshipping Lord Vishnu or Krishna, that is the highest perfection. So Mahaprabhu heard, and he said that actually this is all external. All this is external. This external performance of Varnashrama Dharma, rituals and all this, doesn't lead to change of heart. Yes, you can perform all of this, but still it is material. It's on a material platform. It is not entirely spiritual. So he said, you go further, go higher. So Ramananda Rai then, he quoted this verse 927 from Bhagavad Gita. Yat karoshi yat ashnasi, yat juhosi dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunti, yat tat kurushva madarpanam. That whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever activities you perform, whatever sacrifices you do it as an offering to me, that Krishna says. Then Mahaprabhu heard and said, even this is actually external. Because you're not leaving your material attachments, tendencies. You're still holding back some and giving some to Krishna. So you're not coming out of that attachments completely. And so that is not the perfection. It is still material. So go higher. Then Ramananda said, okay, it's better to give up everything and surrender everything to Krishna. And he quoted this famous Sarva Dharman Parityajya verse. He said, better to give up all these propensities and tendencies and religious principles and then simply surrender to Krishna. Mahaprabhu was not happy with even that. He said, no, that is also not perfect, because one may artificially detach himself and surrender, but that surrender is not real surrender. If somehow you're still holding on to something in the heart, you've not given it up entirely out of surrender, out of love. So that part is missing. It is surrender, but it is again external, he said. So then he said, go further up. Actually, Ramananda Rai then started started debating with Lord, saying, no, actually, even if somebody has given it artificially, but if he's situated on the Brahman platform, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, Na Shochati Na Kamshati, actually has given up everything, then he's situated on the right platform. That is the right platform surrender. But Mahaprabhu said, no, that is still not perfect. It is just based on knowledge and fruitive activities. You have to go higher. So it's leading him to pure devotional service. And then this famous verse was quoted, which is very famous, Brahmaji's prayers, 10:14:3. Jnane prayasa mudapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam sthane stita shrutigatam tanuvan manobhir ye prayasho jita istrilokyam. Very beautiful verse. And this verse, when Mahaprabhu heard, yes, he said, yes, this is what I was coming to. This is what I wanted you to speak. He said that this is the actual, and this is really practical. And Prabhupada actually has given us this. He has exactly given us this, what Mahaprabhu wanted. So we actually have cut short everything and come directly. Prabhupada has given us this platform. So this verse beautifully says that one who has given up all the speculative tendencies, this understanding of impersonal Brahman, all these other philosophical speculations, and one who hears sincerely, situated in his own position, that is Varnashrama, whatever system, whatever situation we are in, be situated in that place, Thane Sthita. But Shrutigatam Tanuvan Manobir, one who hears about your glories from a self-realized soul. That is, so all of this is combined, transcendental knowledge, right source, and then be situated in your platform, whatever, you don't need to change anything. So all of this is combined in this verse. And this, what happens as a result of this? So result is also there. The Lord, who's addressed as Ajita, who's unconquerable, is actually conquered by this devotee who follows this lifestyle. Being situated in his ashram, Vanashram, and sincerely and seriously giving up every other method, Anyabhila Shita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, giving up all this path of Jnana, Karma and everything else, only hearing about Krishna's glories from a pure source, from a pure devotee, he actually conquers the Lord. And what is the result of that conquering? That is the result that Krishna is speaking here, that everything becomes known, nothing else remains unknown. So the devotee conquers Krishna, and Krishna arranges everything for him so that he can go back to Krishna. So all the impediments in our devotional service are removed, and Krishna actually makes the path clear. But we have to do our endeavor. that we have to sincerely practice devotional service in the footsteps of the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and all the Acharyas before him. If you simply follow this lifestyle, then Krishna guarantees he's actually conquered. So he's conquered by the devotee, and then Krishna then arranges everything for the devotee. And just to conclude, this part of conquering is nicely captured in the prayer of Chitraketu Maharaj in 6:16:34. And in that verse, also same thing, you see Ajita, Ajita there. So everybody is addressing, devotees are addressing Krishna as Ajita, but they also say that you become Jita. Krishna, out of the love of his devotee's devotional service, he becomes conquered by the devotee. So same thing here. In Chitraketu Maharaj's case, it's also very nice that we know that how bewildered he was when he lost his son. First of all, he was not supposed to have a son. He had millions of wives, and all of them were, Prabhupada writes, were incidentally barren. So it means it was an arrangement of the Lord that he's not supposed to have a son. But yet he wanted to go against Krishna's plan. And he requested Angira Rishi to give the blessings, the benediction for a son. And Angira Rishi knew exactly what is going to happen, but because he was asking, he just gave it. And he told him that he'll be the cause of happiness as well as suffering. But he didn't understand the suffering part then. He said, okay, suffering is part of material world, We have children, both are there. It's a package. So he just left it there. But very soon we know that his son passed away because of the envy of the co-wives. So when the child passed away, then again Agni Rishi brought Narada Muni. So Prabhupada writes there that first time he did not bring Narada Muni. Second time he brought Narada Muni. Because first time he was not ready to receive transcendental knowledge. So this is the qualification of the hearer. If he is not ready, then the speaker, even if the speaker is speaking pure knowledge, it will not touch our heart. Because we are not ready. So that's why both combinations have to be there. Hearer and speaker. So second time, when after facing the material suffering, when he realized, that time he was ready to receive the knowledge. That's why Angira Rishi brought Narada Muni now. Narada Muni gave him transcendental knowledge. And the result of transcendental knowledge that he started speaking those verses. He gave him mantra to chant that within 7 days you will get darshan of Lord Ananta. So within 7 days he chanted that verse, mantra that given by Narada Muni. And within 7 days he got darshan of Lord Ananta. But as soon as he got darshan, he was completely dumbfounded. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't speak. Can you imagine somebody comes to see you and he's just dumbfounded and doesn't speak for maybe a long time? What will we do? I mean, if it was me, I would have just given him a slap and run away from there maybe. But Krishna was so patiently waiting. Lord Ananta was so patiently waiting for him to speak. And he was smiling, not even he was grudging or nothing. Bhagavatam doesn't say that. He was smiling. Beautiful description of Lord Ananta is there. And he was waiting for Chitraketu Maharaj to speak. This is Krishna. And then Chitraketu Maharaj started speaking beautiful prayers. How is it possible for somebody in that platform to come to this level? It is because he followed the process of hearing from Narada Muni. And he executed the practice of devotion service. And exactly this was what Krishna is speaking. Practically we can see in the life of Chitraketu Maharaj. And he says that you are Ajita, but you are conquered by the devotees who have given up everything else and only exclusively taken shelter of a lotus feet. So with that, I will conclude here. Are there any comments or realizations from anyone? Yeah, of course, it is it's everyone's situation, but in general, what I've heard from Devindan Prabhuji and Guru Maharaj is that we have to make our endeavor, but before doing any endeavor, we have to pray to Krishna. First thing is we have to pray to Krishna, and not that we do independently. Okay, Krishna, I'm praying to you, but I have some other thing in mind. No, we don't try to hide anything from Krishna. Of course, he knows everything, but we have to honestly place our prayer at his lotus feet, saying that Krishna, we have this difficulty. Please take care of it. But I depending on you, let me do whatever I can. So I depend on you completely, but at the same time, I try to do whatever I can. And there also, as you said, to draw the line, of course, it depends on everyone's situation, but we should know from our heart that am I over endeavoring? I'm trying to do too much more than what is required. Sometimes, I have experienced myself that something is not working. I try again and again whether it will work or not. So this effort of trying to do too much, that is going against Krishna's plan. So Krishna has a plan, but we sometimes accept it somehow or the other theoretically, but I say that, okay, I have a plan B. So I try to execute plan B without really depending on Krishna's plan. So of course, we in our immaturity, we may still do that plan B, but we should know that where to stop. Where to stop that, okay, enough is enough now. My plan is not working. So let me fully align with Krishna's plan and let him give him the courage to accept whatever he has planned for me. So that, of course, is a question of practice, and the more you have association with devotees, the more you are doing a sadhana and study of it. It all depends on everyone's circumstance. But in general, the guideline is that, of course, we have to pray to Krishna in the beginning, then try to do honestly, because we don't know what Krishna's plan is at the time. So we try to do whatever we can, but at some point of time, we should know that if it is not working, that is Krishna's plan, that this is not going to work. So I immediately align myself to whatever Krishna's plan is. And the best way to understand Krishna's plan is to speak to senior devotees. That in a beautiful purport in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, I think 1134 purport, that the plan of Krishna is as good as devotee's plan, or other way around. The devotee's plan is as good as Krishna's plan. So we seek in confidence with all our senior devotees here or wherever. Then we ask them what to do, Prabhu Mataji. And whatever they say, we should take it, that is Krishna's plan. Is it help, Mataji? Okay. Prabhu, anything to add? Any other comments?
You brought up a very important point of Angira Muni actually became Svyam Prakash for the first time, and he did not. When he asked him, "How is your kingdom? How are you?" Immediately he went into the point of
Yes.
his sadness. And sometimes people ask, is it not the duty of a sadhu to just penetrate the darkness of the devotee and say, you may ask for the sun, but I will not give you. Now I give you transcendental knowledge. And many people have asked that question, isn't it? Why couldn't Angira she just push through those tasks to situation and say, no, you don't know what's good for you. I know what's good for you. I'm giving it to you. But the fact is, Svyam Prakash Prabhu pointed out, it doesn't work that way. Because no matter what we do, devotional service is premised on the concept of voluntarily accepting instruction. And Angira knew that there was no voluntary nature at that point in time to be a transcendental knowledge. Svyam is a very great devotee, and as Prabhu pointed out so nicely today, there is a vast difference between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge. If you read the beginning part of the chapters, all these qualities are given very nicely. And yet with all those qualities, he could not accept it when this happened. And because he could not accept it, Angira Muni actually realized that his knowledge at that point of time was really on the theoretical plane. And that is why at that point of time, he let matters be. And as Prabhu pointed out, it was not in his destiny actually to get the children. But his mind was so driven and focused that this is what he wanted. So sometimes the great acharyas also teach us by not actually giving us something immediately, because we can sometimes only learn when we get the slaps of Maya Devi. And I think, that is something we have to accept. I know of some disciples who have blamed spiritual masters. Maharaj, if only you had told me this 2 years ago, I would have listened. But you know and he knows that you were not ready to listen. But because our mind is so rascal, we don't blame it. We blame everyone, including the spiritual master. But we cannot take responsibility for our lack of conviction and faith. So this is a very important point. If next time you consult the devotee and the devotee tells you, you just do this way, and later you come back and say, you told me to do this way, now I'm in trouble. Please don't blame the devotee. Because the devotee would have realized, especially the devotees, your spiritual master, or your siksha, or your diksha, they would have realized that you were in no mood to hear. And that is why sometimes the super soul also becomes silent, Bhagavatam says. When we are not ready to hear the super soul, after a while, the super soul doesn't suggest anything to us. The voice of conscience cannot be heard. So we do whatever we want then, and we are subjected to the laws of stringent material nature. But if we are ready to hear them, then even though the medicine may be bitter at the beginning, by hearing, that bitter pill eventually will cure us of this material disease. So that's the vast difference that Svyam Prakash Prabhu is saying between just reading and studying, but ultimately not practicing. You really need to put this into practice. That is very important. Thank you, Prabhu. Such a practical class. Very practical. Very Krishna. Any other questions, comments? Fine. Yes, please.
Thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful class. I wanted to ask you about at times we start, mostly to judge devotees who are speaking. We get nectar from so many places. But as you said, that sometimes when we are not comfortable, we close our mind ears. And sometimes we take the simplicity of a speaker not in the right way. If you can throw some light on practically how we cultivate that habit. So one is that, we know the devotees to demonstrate this, but at least on a practical level, we become choosy, we switch off, we get branched out. How do we?
It's a very practical thing. Gone through it, I'm still going through it. So I remember what the people who shared, what Maharaj said about this, that when we come for classes, we should actually see our eyes, and keep the ears open. Don't see who the speaker is. Of course, we may not be able to do it, but one thing is, as long as the devotee, of course, we should have our own intelligence to see. As long as the devotee is speaking from Prabhupada, quoting Prabhupada, repeating from whatever Prabhupada has spoken, then it doesn't really matter who is the speaker. Whether he may not be able to speak properly in mental sense, but as long as he is sticking to Srila Prabhupada's purports and Prabhupada's descriptions, whatever Prabhupada has given, if he is simply repeating, everything is bona fide. I mean, irrespective of who the speaker is. So that is one thing I can share. Of course, the more we have that mode, we benefit actually. If we don't hear, we are the ones losing. Nobody else is losing. The speaker doesn't lose, nobody else loses. But we are the ones, because we have closed our heart, we lose the benefit of hearing transcendental knowledge. And then all of these processes don't work then. It doesn't help us. So somehow or the other, we have to take the endeavor from. It helps. Yeah.
Actually, another point is actually the answer is also in Svyam Prabhu's class, if we hear carefully. There is a duty of a hearer and there is a duty of the speaker. If they both fulfill their duties, the equation is perfect. Very often, the hearer and the speaker may be at different levels. And that's why sometimes it's no fault of either one, because they're not in sync. Perhaps sometimes we are more inclined to hear Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita in a certain way, and then the speaker delivers it in a certain way. So it's a practical thing sometimes. And because we are human beings, we tend to be, why is it that we cannot take initiation from any available spiritual master? Because all spiritual masters are pure devotees. We should be able to take it from any available spiritual master. And yet Prabhupada and our acharyas recognize that very often these matters of surrendering and hearing are also matters of the heart, and we are inspired. So actually, as Svyam Prakash Prabhu said, it's very important that the hearer should hear exactly the way that has been said. We should come always prepared to hear. And it doesn't matter who the medium is. If they are not out of substance, then we should always hear and take it back. But it's a spectrum. Sometimes we take back more, sometimes we take back less. Sometimes there are very flamboyant speakers and we're very happy, but when we go back, we realize, hey, what did I take back? I was so caught up in this and that, but I didn't take the essence. Then sometimes we hear very, very carefully. Maharaj told me sometimes boring speakers, to use that word, are better because you have to hear more. You have to hear harder. Because otherwise you say, Maharaj told me you fall asleep if he's too soft. Then you have to hear more. In the end, when you come out, you realize, hey, actually I've heard more. And then the good speaker, you are laughing and they are laughing and they are making your hair stand and you feel good. But when you go out, you just think, oh, I enjoyed the class. But you don't really practice it. So you see, it's also a matter of our perspective. So you're right. The hearer has a duty. And then the speaker also must commonsensically try to put it across. If the speaker speaks, I remember being in a class where the speaker was speaking and then he fell asleep. He actually fell asleep as he was speaking, you see, because he was very tired. But half the audience were new, so they did not know he was tired. But as he spoke and he started to sleep, half the audience thought this is very strange. Has he gone into ecstasy? Is he in trance? They were from that background, you see. But actually he was very tired. So commonsensically, speakers also should try. That's why generally you find a lot of temples now. They give you some very basic points. You put across a certain nice point. You give some elaboration. Actually, if you hear Prabhupada's lectures, Prabhupada did that. Prabhupada had stories, Prabhupada had philosophy, Prabhupada had transcendental humor. So it must be a little bit of everything. Of course, purity speaks for itself. A pure devotee, he can speak 10 words and you can speak for 1 hour, but that 10 words will make all the difference. So it's a realm that's very difficult to do. As Svyam Prakash Prabhu pointed out, the equation, has to be correct. That's why we relish Bhagavatam, because Bhagavatam got it right. You have Shukadeva Goswami who's perfect, and you have Parikshit Maharaj that's perfect. I think if the combination was not good, then the effect can sometimes be good. But we must adjust. I think it's important for hearers to adjust to the speakers. And of course, speakers have a responsibility to keep improving themselves. Hear from other devotees feedback, and these things become important, very important. Is that helpful, Prabhu? So I'm looking for anything else? I think you've heard, right? There's so many kinds of speakers and all that. But what to do? We have to hear them all. We have to hear them.
Thank you very much. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai.
Right, great Svyam Prakash Prabhu ki
Jai. Jai Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki Jai Shri Govitai ki Jai Shri Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Dwadasi ki Jiva Jayo Jayo Rachande Arati Shobha Jiva Jayo भाजे भजे करतारा मधुरा में गंगा भाजे परमारसा मधुरा में गंगा भाजे परमारसा माधुर 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 भाजे माधुर 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 भाजे शंखा भाजे घंटा भाजे माधुर 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 भाजे शंखा बाजे घंटा बाजे माधुर 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 बाजे शंखा बाजे घंटा बाजे माधुर 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 बाजे शंखा बाजे घंटा बाजे माधुर 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 बाजे माधुर 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 बाजे माधुर 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 बाजे हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल तगोर हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल तगोर हरि बोल हरि बोल जीवा बाहु कोटि चंद्राजी बदना उज्वाला खालह देसे बना महला कोरे जल महला खालह देसे बना महला कोरे जल महला Jiva Shiva Shukha Narada Megadadha Jiva Shiva Shukha Narada Megadadha Bhagavati Vinoda Devi Gora Sakhaya Jai Bhakti Vinod Thakur Bhagavati Vinoda Devi Gora Sakhaya अधिक शोभा हरि हरि जय गौरानिताय 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 जय गौरानिताय Krishna Krishnaya Gurukare Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Hari Bol Jai Srila Prabhupada Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastya Kyade Satarine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Gauranga Mahaprabhu Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Bol Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Jai Jagannath. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Bol. Can't hear you. Hare Bol. Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Hari Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Can't hear you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Jaya Nityananda Ram. Jaya Nityananda Ram. Nithai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nithai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotri Sat Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotri Sat Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki ISKCON Founder, BBD Founder, BI Founder, Bhakti Kalachetra Founder, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Shri Shri Sat Goswami Prabhu's Ki Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Bhumi Dham Ki Shri Mathura Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Shri Nilachala Purushottama Chaitya Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Chakra Tirtha Vamna Chaitya Dwarka Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Manmai Ki Srimati Tulsi Vrindai Devi Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Hare Krishna Mahamantra Yudharma Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki. So any of the young ones would like to sing Namaste Narasimha?
Okay, next video, right?
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
அடுத்த வாரம் நெக்ஸ்ட் வீக்
Please remember that on Monday we are going to have a program for Untitled Chapter. In the center, we have plenty of people, very straightforward program. We have now some people who will be speaking, and I think that will be very wonderful. Tomorrow morning, Svyam Prakash Prabhu program, or the Bhagavan Days, the Road Shanti program. Please come and join us and hear Bhagavan. And thank you very much for joining us. We also want to thank all the devotees who keep doing all this. Right? The online. Abhay Mohan Prabhu. Who else is behind? Ganesh Prabhu.
He's not here today, but he's always, around. He's omnipotent. And today, it was so nice to have Bhagavan Prabhu playing the Mridanga. Long before any Mridanga players were there, week in, week out, the Lakshmana temple, it would be him. He would be there, he would sing, he would play the Mridanga. So now I'm requesting him to sing more and to play more. What do you all think?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so I think he should. It's just that he starts perspiring whenever he has to play because he's very nervous. But he's a wonderful singer, and for many years before he was managing all this, that was his great service actually. So, service never ends. It's just a matter of getting some encouragement from devotees, and then we're ready to go do more service. So nice to see the young devotees here today. They all look very happy. I think they had the children's class. You heard Radhe singing very spontaneously. She's one of our youngest. And today's, Nasinghadev Arati was sung so wonderfully also. So we are looking at a bright future with so many young devotees coming up. Please keep this going, keep the process going, be happy for devotional service. Nothing is wrong with Krishna actually. It's just us actually. It's our attitude, it's our mood. That must be the most important thing. Thank you very much, Prabhus and Mataji's. Any other? There's a sponsorship today. Very nice. Grandmother of Nitai Prem Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. The late Prakash Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for giving us the opportunity, to remember her in this way. Thank you. And I think you've started something that's important. Even though we are getting packets of prasadam, it doesn't mean, that the devotees who are not working hard. They may not be in the kitchen, but they are packing. That's extra. Ask those who are packing. Packing is an industry in itself. It's a service in itself, actually. So please, I think we should restart the prasadam sponsorship. It cannot be, that we come and we have prasadam, and surely that prasadam, if we sponsor, will actually bring blessings to many devotees, bring blessings to us, and also help us to support this center. It's very important actually. So that's why we decided, I think at Vaidya Prabhu, that we're not going to put a figure to the amount, because in previous times we could tell you based on number of people, we could have $350 on Saturday. We're not going to say that. But if you want to give 500, we won't complain. Right? If you say, no, never mind, last time it was 350, now it's 350 because there's packing, we also don't. If you say, that's all, I can only afford to give 50, why should we mind? You're still happy. Because this transaction is not between you and me. This transaction is between you and Krishna. Right? It goes to Jai. So thank you very much, Prabhu and Mataji. And remember, the last Saturday of February, we will have Kirtan night. Right? So let's look forward to Kirtan night also. And I'll be calling the Kirtan singers who are going to be slotted for that. And then we'll have March, and hopefully we have many, many more times to have. And I think in the first quarter, towards just after Gaur Purnima, we should have one of those longer Kirtans, right? Where we can spend an entire, half a day or even 12 hours. We used to do that. And I think we should try to do that again. Hare Krishna. Jai Jagannath, Baladev Subhadra Mai ki. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai. Everybody like Shurinda ki. Jai. All Premanande.